All right, Gator fans, welcome to the Peek Inside Gator Football USF preview. This is our second preview show of the year. It's live. This is always my favorite time of the week. You guys always comment, have cool questions. I'm here for it. Today, I am joined by Will Thomas of Tailgate Talk SEC, and more recently, he's been making some appearances on A Peek Inside the SEC. Will, how you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, have you been having fun going on A Peek Inside the SEC? Is it stressful to go on air with me because such a space cadet? Like, what's your experience been like?
No, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, it's been really just fun coming on with you guys and just talking ball the past few weeks. And I was nervous at first, but got pretty comfortable with you pretty fast. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Well, we have really enjoyed it so far, and I'm so excited because there just is so many big games every single week. So there's just so much to talk about. If you are not following A Peek Inside the SEC, go ahead and subscribe. Will, TJ, and I are on there every Monday at 10 a.m. And we've got previews that come out throughout the week as well. But we are live Mondays at 10 a.m. and we have a lot of fun. And there's a lot of good football being played in the SEC once again this year, as always. So we've got lots to talk about. Okay, but today, what we have to talk about is USF. And I mean, USF surprised everybody in what I would say is maybe the second biggest upset of the week one slate. They beat Boise State, who was a playoff team last year. It was impressive, really, from start to finish. Give us a little overview of what they did well in that game.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that USF executed well was turnovers. They won that turnover battle 3-0, and they've averaged top 15 nationally in turnovers forced in the past two seasons, so that really wasn't a surprise. But the one thing that is notable about how that game against Boise went is that all three of them were fumbles. And the reason why I point that out is because fumbles are much harder to sustain than interceptions, right? Because the second that ball pops out, it can bounce anywhere. So really, it wasn't all luck because obviously forcing fumbles, there's skill to that, but that ball could have easily bounced back into a Boise lineman's arms. So first forcing three turnovers is obviously very impressive, but all of them being fumbles, that's a good sign for Florida and for the other teams who will play them because that's not totally sustainable. And
Right.
really, I mean, you mentioned by surprise, I really do think USF just kind of jumped on Boise. I mean,
Yeah.
having Byron Brown all the way back healthy and running as well as he was, that was incredible to watch. And their fake punt touchdown, I mean, literally nobody saw that coming. So that was one of the biggest turning points of the game. And more offensively, they had a lot of explosives really on the ground. Alvin Isaac, who was their leading rusher 2 weeks ago, or last week, sorry, he had 3 carries for 52 yards, but one of those carries went for 49. So
Mm.
just those are the kinds of plays that can really shift the game on its head in a snap. You can go from 3rd and 9 at midfield to 1st and goal in just one snap. So Boise was very good. USF, sorry, was very good with the explosives, and Boise really just got shocked by them and couldn't recover from the punches that the Bulls threw at them.
It killed me to watch. And I mean, I was cheering for USF. I live in Tampa. I want the Bulls to do well when they're not playing Florida. But it killed me that Boise State didn't pick up on the fact that they trotted their backup quarterback out there instead of a punter. Um, you know, I you probably already know this about me, but if you don't, you will continue to learn it throughout the season. Special teams matter. And it is insane to me when mistakes like that are allowed to happen. But I digress. Let's talk a little bit about Byron Brown. He's a really good athlete. And you mentioned you mentioned already a little bit, but tell us what you think he does well and what UF really needs to kind of look out for.
Yeah, so Byram is really Lenore's Sellers light. And I don't mean that as a slight to Brown. It's just that I'm incredibly high on Sellers. But
You are
I mean,
very
Brown
high on
is,
players.
yeah, but Brown is 6'3, 231 at quarterback. I mean, he's very hard to take down in the backfield. The first defensive lineman who gets to him a lot of times can't bring him down. And he's an incredibly physical runner for a quarterback. Like, he will not slide. There was a play in that game against Boise where he broke through for a long touchdown, and he had already scored at this point. Like, he could have walked into the goal line and not hit anybody. He went out of his way to flatten a Boise State safety. Like, that's just how he plays. Like, he just really wants to have that impression on defenses and really strike fear into them to make them not want to go tackle him. And just being that sort of dual threat player, it really keeps defenses guessing and on their toes because they can play great coverage for 4 seconds on like a 3rd and long, and then they look back and all of a sudden he's 20 yards downfield. Like, just that sort of quickness and explosiveness in the ground game really makes him very hard to game plan for as a defensive coordinator.
What does he maybe struggle with?
Really, it's kind of the same thing that you see a lot of these big-bodied running quarterbacks deal with, and that's consistency passing. So he had a 59.1% completion rate last year. Now he was hurt and missed a lot of last year, but that doesn't really impact the percentages, right? Because that's how well he was throwing the ball. 64.8% the year before, and in 2023, his last fully healthy year, he did throw 11 picks. So he's explosive, and when he connects with a guy downfield, it's one of the most impressive throws maybe you've ever seen. But that inconsistency can really kind of put his team behind the eight ball at times, whether that's missing a guy on a crossing route in a conversion situation or throwing a pick when he can't afford to. So that's really where defenses can get after him, is containing him in the pocket and forcing him to throw the ball downfield where he struggled a bit in the past.
What are other weapons that USF has that UF fans should be aware of?
Yeah, so at receiver, they have Chaz Nimrod. He came in from Tennessee this past season as
Mhm.
a transfer. So that game against Boise was his first game. He's a very explosive downfield threat. He only had 3 catches against Boise, but those went for 96 yards. So he's really a downfield, a quick lightning bolt kind of guy. And Alvin Isaac at running back, I kind of already brought him up. He's a true sophomore at USF. Didn't do a whole lot last year, but he showed the explosiveness that Nimrod has just in the ground game. So those are two more players that the Bulls have on offense that Alex Golesh can really just kind of try and mess around with and just get creative, try and get them in space because they're really hard guys to grab onto and limit their explosiveness in the open field.
Defensively, USF held Boise State to just a first quarter touchdown, and then they didn't score the rest of the game. Are the Bulls really good on that side, or do you think maybe the loss of Ashton Genty was a bigger issue?
I think the Genty loss redefined that entire team. Because you look at last season, Boise was averaging 6.1 yards per carry with Genty doing most of the work. They averaged 3.2 last week against USF. And their quarterback, Maddox Madsen, I like him as a competitor. He's just not that great at football. And I think that Genty masked a lot of that last season because you had teams crowding the box, selling out for the run. So then, you had receivers open, and that's why his numbers were so good. He only threw 6 picks to Madsen last year, but that goes back to what I was saying about how teams aren't really preparing for the pass because you have a guy who could have won the Heisman in the backfield. I think Madsen throws into too many tight windows without a ton of consistent success. He only had a 62.4% completion rate last year. And going back to that game specifically, when offenses are struggling, I normally look at what did the opposing defensive line do? Like, did they really put them off schedule? Were they tormenting them the entire time? USF's D line didn't really do that. I mean, they only tallied 1 sack, and in the back end, they only had 1 pass deflection. So it's not even like USF's defense was really swarming and suffocating Boise's offense. It was just those 3 fumbles because Boise outgained them a little bit overall. They had 10 more first downs than USF did. They had 13 more minutes of possession. Boise just couldn't hold on to the ball. So
Okay,
the Broncos really were, moving it with some relative success. It's just they kept putting it on the ground.
yeah. Okay, well, that kind of brings me to my next question. You mentioned that really there wasn't anything special that USF was doing defensively in the trenches. Let's talk about the trenches. It would seem like UF has a pretty big advantage here on both sides of the ball in the trenches. Can USF hold up against Florida's offense and defensive lines?
I'd be very surprised if they did. I mean, not a great pass rush against Boise. And Florida's pass blocking, it wasn't awesome in the opener, right? You could see it
Right.
live as you were watching.
Right.
And if you go to the run blocking, DJ Lagway had a better run block grade than Bryce Lovett per PFF. Like, the offensive line for Florida really just wasn't there in
Yeah.
week one. But now that they've had a week to deal with that and get a week back in practice, knowing that you have a stronger opponent than Long Island coming in, I don't think that O-line, I don't think it'll be totally fixed, but I don't believe it's going to be a glaring, game-changing issue now in their second game. I think Florida should be able to carve big holes in the run game, and I mean, Jaden Ball can flatten anybody.
Mm,
And Boise, on the other side of that, they got 4 sacks last week against USF's offensive line. And nobody needs me to tell them that Florida's defensive line is stronger than that of Boise's.
right.
So I really think that Florida's front seven is going to have a pretty good time getting back in the backfield to Byron Brown and those running backs. Now Brown does have that escapability, but consistent pressure throughout the game, hitting him a bunch, that gets to every single quarterback that's ever played the game. So if you hit Brown a lot, you tire him out, you make him start feeling you, his dual threat ability kind of goes down a little bit if he's beat up, if he's tired. So I do think the biggest edge is Florida's defensive line, in my opinion, and I think they should have a lot of success against USF's blockers.
what should UF fans be the most concerned about with this USF team? Like if USF is going to have some success against the Gators, it's going to be because of what?
Byron Brown being able to take over the game, right? So let's say I'm wrong about the pass rush. Let's say they do get good pressure, but
Mhm.
maybe they're not containing the gaps correctly. Maybe one guy's out of position. Brown will make you pay for that every single time. He's such an elite athlete. So whether the pass rush just isn't there like I think it is, or it's there, but maybe they're getting too far downfield, so then Brown's able to escape between the tackle and get upfield. He can be a game wrecker, and the tackling needs to be sharp on him because Boise really struggled to tackle in general last week. They could not get Brown down for the life of them. So if when Brown gets to that second level, Florida needs their corners and their safeties to be able to wrap him up, and if not bring him down, just hold on to him until a linebacker gets there, because Brown really can wreck a game all on his own, and also just those explosive plays that I talked about. Right, you have Alvin Isaac in the run game, Chaz Nimrod in the passing game. Like Florida could be smothering USF down in their own end, and all of a sudden a 30, 40-yard run changes the entire drive like that. So USF has already shown the ability to have explosive plays. Florida needs to be able to contain that. And I'm kind of repeating myself, but that really just starts with the pass rush again, not giving them time to settle in, be comfortable, and get into what they want to do.
Joe67 says USF's quarterback is a good improvised runner. Keep a spy on the QB. I think that's a good point. That'll be something we
Mm-hmm.
can look out for. Okay, so conversely, what should USF fans who might be watching this be concerned about from UF? I think the easy answer is the pretty big talent gap. So maybe something other than that.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's the trenches, just really them being leaned on all game by the Gators. And I think Florida will probably unlock a little more of their passing game this week than we saw against Long Island. Because I think in theory, DJ will play more than just the first half. And I don't have the injury information, but like Aiden Mizell and Dallas Wilson, they were both out last week. If you get
Mhm.
one or both of them back this week, that's another speedster, or like in Dallas's spot, another 5-star freshman to come in for DJ to throw the ball to. And I do think that playbook really was a bit vanilla last week for Florida. They weren't showing everything. So I think against the Bulls, you might get a little bit more. They'll still save their favorite stuff for LSU in week 3, I think, but I do believe Florida opens it up on offense a little bit more. And I talked about Byron Brown, his inconsistency passing, putting the ball in dangerous spots. I think Florida's secondary can definitely take advantage of that, because if Brown is rushed, if he's throwing off balance, I think those Florida DBs can have a field day trying to pick some passes off, teeing off on receivers. And also, it's worth noting, the last time USF and Florida played, it was in Gainesville. Florida escaped by a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not something that I think that program is forgetting, right?
Yep.
So even if it's a lot of new players on both sides, I think Florida does want to go out there and take care of business. And just like USF cannot come to Gainesville and compete. Like they're not going to beat us. They're not going to keep it close. We're going to dominate these guys. So that's really what I think Florida's going to be able to flex their muscles at.
Yeah, that was definitely a scare back in 2022. Napier, obviously the coach then as well. Okay, so we're going to do something fun. You have never participated in this before with me. Last season, we always did some kind of, pick 'em segment. But this is a little bit new this year. I appreciate Sleeper for their support. Go download the Sleeper app and use the code PEEK, PEEK, for 100% deposit match up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Okay, so we're about to make some picks. So get your phones out now and let's win some money together. All right, I'm going to ask you, and you are going to tell me more or less. Byron Brown, more or less than 175.5 passing yards.
I'm going to go less, because I think that this game is going to come down to, can he create with his legs, right? Because I think he'll throw for a little bit. He'll have maybe one or two good chunk plays, but I think overall, consistently, he's not going to have a great downfield passing attack. The Bulls won't this week. So I'll go under on that. Maybe not by a whole ton, but I do believe that with the pressure that Florida's D-line is going to get, he'll be scrambling and running a lot more than he will be passing.
Okay. DJ Lagway, more or less than 265.5 passing yards.
265 might be too much. I'm going to go less, not because I don't think he can do it, but because I just don't think that's how the game's going to go. I think that Florida's going to lean on the run game even more so in this game. So I think that Ball will probably be a triple-digit guy again. I think Jacoby Jackson will get a bunch of carries. So I'm going to go under on Lagways, not because I think USF's defense can stop him. I just don't know if that's going to be in their game plan in the cards for this Saturday.
Okay, guys, if you're watching at home, you can play along with us in the comments. Let us know more or less when I ask Will the questions. Okay. Byron Brown, more or less than 0.5 passing touchdowns?
I'll give him more. I think he gets one because I think, especially if they get down to the red zone, like Florida's priority is going to be do not let this guy just walk into the end zone. So I think if they're if they're inside the 10, maybe closer to the end zone, and all of a sudden you got like 8 guys in the box, I do think USF has the weapons out wide to go get at least one. So I'll say Brown gets a passing touchdown this week.
All right, DJ Lagway, more or less than 2.5 passing touchdowns?
I'll give him more. I think that he'll play more than last week in the first half. I think he also had 3. Granted, this is not Long Island, but I do think he plays at least 80% of this game, and I think that Florida's going to be able to score probably 35 or 42. So let's say you have 6 touchdowns to go around. I do think Lagway will end up throwing for at least 3 of those. So I'll go more on Lagway there also.
Well, Luis Torres commented, he says way more than 2.5. Johnny says Gators by 1,000,000. Okay, let's talk about Keyshawn Singleton. More or less than 43.5 receiving yards?
That's going to be close. I'll probably give him a little more because I think that Florida's focus in the passing game will be on Nimrod. So,
Okay.
I do like Florida's secondary more than just, taking away that top guy. I think it's a deep enough room, but it is young, which we have talked about this summer. So if I think Singleton will be in matchups with, maybe the 3rd or 4th best corner in Florida's room at certain points, whether guys are just rotating in and out, guys are on Nimrod. So yeah, I'll say Singleton gets a little more than that.
Okay, this one I think is kind of a trap question. Trey Wilson, more or less than 58 receiving yards?
That's a hard one to pick because he had
Negative.
-4 last week and still scored. Um, I might have to go less just because I think that everybody in the receiver room for Florida is going to have like 45.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be spread out around. You still want to get your young guys used to, being in these situations before you begin conference play. So I think Vernell Brown, I think Trey, I think everybody in that room is going to be at like 50 or 60. Now, could Trey easily like pop a little pass for, a 70-yard touchdown? Sure, he could. So I would not be at all surprised if he goes over, but just because of the way this profile is where I do think Florida's going to run the ball a good bit, and I think the ball gets spread around, I have a hard time putting really any Florida receiver over that 55-yard mark until we see more of the games.
Brian Smith agrees with you. He says it's a hard one because we share the ball, which is
Yeah.
true. Okay, well, before I let you go, I need your score prediction.
Give me 42. I'll go 42-17 Florida. I think their offense is able to just kind of keep pushing the ball downfield with a let off the gas a little bit near the end. And I do think USF's offensive talent it's good enough where they're going to get some, right? I think at the end, if you have Florida's 2s in on defense, they'll be able to get one more in garbage time. So I'll go 42-17, something like that.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on. Let everybody know where they can find your content and follow you on social media.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at WThomasSports. My podcast is called Tailgate Talk SEC. This is all I'm going to do really for the rest of my life, hopefully. So if you ever want to see some stuff about SEC football, just come my way and I'll be happy to talk about it with you.
All right. That is very good. This was fun. I can't wait to see how you did against our more or less pick'em contest. Again, brought to you by Sleeper. Everybody that's watching at home, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button. You can support the show with a super chat. I want to know all your questions and your thoughts. Let me know in the comments for sure. And before we go on, let me remind you guys that if you are going to the game or watching from home, Alumni Hall is your ultimate Gator shopping experience, either on Archer Road when you're in Gainesville or online at alumnihall.com. They have the best and the largest selection of game day gear. Go see them and tell them Allie Peak sent you. Okay, guys, let's talk a little bit about this matchup. It is Saturday at 4:15 in the Swamp. It's going to be on SEC Network. And right now, Florida is favored by 18.5 points, and the over-under is 52.5. So I think that's all, some interesting information. I want to give you a little bit of series history. We do this every time we do a preview show. Florida has actually never lost to USF. 3-0 all time. But as Will talked about in our previous segment, the last meeting was September 17th. By the way, that's my birthday, 2022. The Gators barely survived 31-27 28. It was Billy Napier's debut season. Anthony Richardson was our quarterback. It was far too close for comfort. I really do think that this Gator team will keep that in mind. Let's talk a little bit about this Bulls team, though. Obviously, 1-0 against Boise State. Opened 2025 with that 34-17 upset. That was huge. It was at home. Tampa was very excited. And it was kind of on just a national stage for everybody to see. Alex Golish is their head coach. I personally think he is great. He's 15-2 in 27 games. And that's a really difficult thing to accomplish at USF. He's rebuilding a program that had just one winning season in the 5 years prior to his arrival. Golish comes from Tennessee. And, he talked in his post-game press conference about the fact that this Boise win was the first time in 2.5 years that he felt USF actually showed its team identity. And he's talked a lot this week about how they're entering the swamp with confidence. This was a big confidence boost for him and his team. And he said he's looking for a puncher's chance to land big plays and compete against the Gators. Obviously, Florida is 1-0 coming off that 55-0 rout of Long Island University in week 1, which was the first shutout since 2021, which was 42-0 versus Vanderbilt. It is also the most points scored in the Napier era and the most since scoring 70 versus Samford in 2021. All of those things are really impressive. I know we keep prefacing things with, but it was Long Island, and it was. But Florida still did some really impressive things on Saturday. I'm going to look over and see some of y'all's comments over here. Florida has never lost to USF, but Florida State has. J&J Trucking says he was really rusty, Billy the Goat. I'm in a better place, though, after seeing TJ take that backup spot. Brian Smith, NIL and transfers have definitely leveled the playing field. I think that's true. Kenny Roberts, we needed that warm-up game. We did. This is the first time in the Billy Napier era that the season hasn't kicked off with a massive game. He played Utah his first season, Utah again his second season. Miami was the opener last year. I do really, really think that it is great to start your season with a couple tune-up games. It's fun for us to tune in and watch everybody else start with a big game, but our schedule is tough enough as it is. I would rather have a couple games to kind of tune up. I think this season it was even more important than normal because DJ Lagley was so limited in the spring and summer, and we have so many young and new talented wide receivers who have not had time to really kind of develop a rhythm with Lagway yet. So I think that there's a lot of learning on the fly that's going on, and I am excited that we get to ease into the season a little bit. Billy the Goat 15 says, what do you guys think about Lagway's performance? I thought Lagway did exactly what we wanted him to do. He was 15 of 18. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He didn't turn the ball over on the ground. I don't know that there's a whole lot more that we could expect from him. I do think we watched him steadily improve over those 2 quarters, which is why it was important they did keep him in for a full 2 quarters. And I think that the best is yet to come, obviously. Michael Swindow, let's face it, USF players will have a chip on their shoulder. They were passed over by UF. Possibly. Joe 67, once USF has their stadium, they should draw better recruits. That's true. And Tampa is such a recruiting hotbed. Obviously, the state of Florida in general is just absolutely rich with high school talent. But Tampa itself has so many incredible high school athletes that here. So USF really doesn't even have to leave the 813 to be stacked. So I do think that stadium helps for sure. NIL does level the playing field as well. And I think Alex Golish as your head coach gives you a chance in almost every matchup as well. Let's see. Mo Lewis, will DJ read the middle of the field better this year? Go Gators. I think that's something he is working on. Lee Minson, Joey Knight at Tampa Bay Times Bull is an awesome journalist, always fair to Gator football, much like many old Tampa Bay Times writers back in the day. Thank goodness Matt Vapor has moved on. Awful to the Gators. I personally love Joey Knight. I think he's wonderful. I grew up here in Tampa, so absolutely familiar with his work. He is the best of the best. Gators have better talent and more depth. That's true. I think Banks, Sapp, and Lions will have a feast on Saturday. Y'all, I hope so. And man, our offensive line struggled. I hope we get that fixed this weekend. I do. I think we need to clean up right tackle. but I think there's some stuff on film for them to work on, and I expect improvement. Guys, we are 105 subscribers away from 15,000. So if you are watching this and you're not subscribed, do me a favor, take 2 seconds and hit that button for me. It's free, and it definitely helps me out, helps grow the channel. All right, let's talk a little bit more about Florida and how they did last week. So the defense, I really think, is where the story is. They allowed only 86 total yards and 1 first down per half. They set the tone with complete dominance. The last time Florida allowed so few yards was 2016. So this is not just because it's a Long Island. This hasn't happened for a very long time in Gainesville. It was a dominant performance. DJ Lagway was efficient, 15 of 18, as I said a couple of minutes ago. He was critical of his play, though. He said that he was sloppy and he must improve. I love when a quarterback goes 15 for 18, has 3 touchdowns and no turnovers, and tells me he was sloppy and needs to improve. His bar is incredibly high for himself, and I am here for that. He has battled back from that calf strain that he had. He's had shoulder, soft tissue issues. So he was limited both in the spring and all through preseason camp. So he is just getting adjusted as he goes. And so, like I said, I'm glad we have 2 warm-up games to get ready before we head to Baton Rouge, Death Valley at night. 13 true freshmen saw action in week 1. That is huge. If you want to know why Billy Napier is so successful recruiting guys out of high school, he is going to point to that stat right there. He's going to say 13 guys saw action their very first college game. I think that signals a deep underclassmen pipeline. I think it shows that the best players get on the field regardless of age. And I think it shows that he is interested in getting everybody as much play as possible. And I think that that's got to be so huge when it comes to recruiting. Miles Graham talked after the game saying the team's approach doesn't change by opponent. When he was asked about USF, basically says his quote was, "We're going to spot the ball and play our brand of Gator football." That makes me think that they aren't looking ahead to LSU. They take this seriously. They know that USF could be dangerous. They know that there's some talent and some great coaching there, and they're not overlooking. And I think that that's growth on these for Coach Napier and these teams. I don't know that we could have said that 3 years ago. So I'm excited for this game on Saturday. I really do think it's going to be a great one. I think the Gators are going to dominate, and I'm excited that they are not taking this for granted. Let me see. Kenny Roberts Splack will be perfect on Saturday. I don't know if you guys have watched. I have a video out right now with my husband, Eric, who was an All-American punter for Florida, played in the NFL, also now coaches high school special teams and coaches kickers and things. And he broke down the film really well. And he does not think that many of the issues are a big deal with our kicking game. He thinks they're very easily correctable things that they'll go back, they'll watch tape this week, they'll make adjustments, and it won't be issues that we will see on Saturday. So I hope he's right about that, because 3 missed field goals against anybody but Long Island could definitely cause issues. Ye Old Bast says, to echo what many others have said, this game will tell us a lot about the rest of the season. I think so too. I think if Florida comes out and dominates, then we still will have more to learn about this team with harder opponents. If Florida comes out and struggles, that's not a good sign for these tougher games that are coming down the pipeline. But I definitely think we will glean more from this game than we will from the Long Island game. Let's see. Brian Fisher, the way this team was dialed in and locked on LIU as a real team shows we won't overlook anybody, no trap games. I do feel like they were dialed in. I did feel like the sideline was hyped. The atmosphere from the fans was awesome. And there was no goofing around on the sidelines. They did take this one seriously. Not much of a Napier fan, but the Gators seem to have some swagger about themselves. That's what I feel the difference is. I do think that this team knows what they have, and they're excited to show it to the rest of the world. There was so much football. Florida was the only game I didn't watch because they didn't play a big time game. The one season in Coach Napier's tenure that didn't give us a tough matchup. They hate UF. No, I love this. And actually this game was supposed to be FAMU, I believe, and then they canceled on us. I think only about a year and a half ago. So Long Island is who we filled in with. It was not who was originally scheduled. These games get scheduled years and years in advance. I was totally good with a tune-up game. You can keep your Miami and your Utahs till week 3, week 4 of the season. Thank you. Michael Dixon, cool. Never caught a live show. Go Gators. Well, thanks for tuning in. The accolades and achievements of Billy Napier are very impressive. And then Kenny Roberts, Allie, I think we're finally built like an SEC team. I do too. I think our trenches are deep. I think that is, the very first thing that happens for it. When you have a successful SEC program, that's the number one thing you can point to is deep trenches. I think when Alabama was Alabama, maybe not this past week, trenches were something we could look at. The dominant Georgia teams, it's trenches. And back when Florida was winning a lot, trenches. Think about the defensive lines for Florida in 2006 and 2008. I mean, just absolute monsters back there. And so I do think that's part of it. We have an all-world quarterback, and that's hugely helpful. But Coach Napier has done an incredible job recruiting Florida. The team that he has, the roster that he has, looks so different than it did 4 years ago. It's the pieces that fit into his puzzle, his schemes, and I do think that makes a huge difference. But they also are all bought in and aligned with his culture, his brand of football, and that is maybe more important than the X's and O's. Let's talk a little bit about some of these storylines that are in this matchup. This is an in-state team. I wouldn't call USF a rival, but we do battle sometimes for the same kids. We are recruiting the same area. I think it is incredibly important for Florida to always win the head-to-head matchups against teams from in the state. It's why Florida State is important, even though it's not a conference game. It's why Miami is important, even though it's not a conference game. It is a huge boost to in-state recruiting when you are the dominant program. Another thing I'm going to be watching is, will USF ride momentum and challenge UF with big plays, or is just that talent and depth separation going to show incredibly quickly? And I also want to see DJ Lagway's continued growth as QB1. He is in the spotlight. This is his team. This is his show. He is a national name at this point, and everybody is looking to see how he takes the next step. And then also another storyline is Florida's defense. It looked so dominant against LIU, but also it's LIU. Can they replicate that against a stronger opponent? And if they can, I think that really, really makes the future look bright in Gainesville. Let's see what else you guys had to say. I don't think any team will score more than 20 on us in any game. I hope that's true. Neil wants to know, does Spurrier talk to the team before the game? If he doesn't, he should. I don't know if he talks to them on game day. I do know that he's around the program a lot. Luis Torres, I really like our QB2's arm. Billy is a good recruiter, but he needs to make sure we get to keep him. I think that's the most complicated part about NIL era. Tramel Jones is incredibly talented. He is a true freshman. Florida obviously recruited him out of high school. If he has to sit for 2 years behind DJ Lagway, there are going to be programs knocking on the door for him. The key for Coach Napier is to build that relationship. Let Jones see what the vision is that they have for him once Lagway moves on. And NIL is going to be a factor in this as well. Nobody talks about it, but Billy got good pregame speeches. I have never seen them. I would love to see them. I would love to see any of his rah-rah speeches, actually. Kenny Roberts, the last time we played USF, it was a lot of Mullen players. It'll be different this time. It was Mullen players, but I push back a little bit on that because the second you become the head coach of a program, they're your players. I understand that he didn't recruit them. They may not have fit into his system in the same way, but they become your players. That's one of the things that Urban Meyer was always so adamant about. But that was not a well-played or well-coached game by Florida. I am looking for more this time around. Nick Nephew, I think since there's much more film on USF than there is on LIU, our O-line won't have an issue with whatever looks the USF defense throws at us. That's a good point. I could find almost nothing on LIU when I was looking around last week. Bernard Yout, trap games are a myth. No one trapped you into a loss. You either are prepared or the better team was better. No one tricked you or trapped you, and you wasn't hoodwinked. If you lose, it's your fault. I totally agree that if you lose, it's your fault. I think a trap game is essentially a game that you think that you're going to have no issue with, but you do think you're going to have an issue with a game down the road. And so that's what pulls your attention away. But I agree, one game at a time is how you should take it. But USF put themselves on the map last week with their win against Boise State. So I don't have any concerns that this is a trap game. Gabe says, this is Billy's year to shut up the grumbling that never seems to end. You know, there are high standards that come with a $9 million job at the University of Florida. And some of it's warranted, some of it's not warranted. I think Napier has done a pretty good job taking it on the chin when it's deserved and just kind of ignoring it when it's not. But this is the year. He's got his quarterback. He's got his roster. He's got his team. It's one of the hardest schedules in the country. If they perform well, everyone will be paying attention to the Florida Gators. They're on the journey on Gators YouTube. Brian, I will check it out. D-Jack, can't take USF lightly. Bama struggled with them last year. That's true. There's a chance Bama was going to lose to them last year. Bernard, yeah. Oh, that was the trap game question. Okay. So I have 5 questions that I am going to be looking for answers for in this game. Let me know if you agree with these or not. But can UF's offensive line give Lagway more time to do his thing? I'm looking particularly at that right side. Have little tweaks been made to the field goal unit? Reference that video that I have out this morning, but Eric Wilbur talks about things like the lean of the ball, which is in control of the holder, the way the laces are facing, where exactly you spot the ball, how your hips as the holder are open to your target. Little tiny adjustments to things like that make all the difference between making or missing a field goal. So did those tweaks happen this week in practice? And do we get a repeat performance from VB3? I cannot tell you how exciting it is for me personally to watch Vernell Brown III out there for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, his dad played with my husband. We were friends in college. I remember VB3 running around out there. I just absolutely am so excited for him and his family. But the other reason is I am one of 4 3-generation football families. My grandfather, my dad, and my brother all played football for the Gators. The Browns became the 4th 3rd-generation family when VB3 committed to the University of Florida. And I just think that's pretty darn cool too. I also want to know is Trey Wilson going to be a factor? He had -4 yards in this past game. He did have a touchdown, but I want to see that he's used appropriately because I really do think that he is a weapon. I'm going to go over to the comments real quick and let's see. Michael Dixon, we have so much depth, very good players. Denton Carter, if we control the line of scrimmage on both sides, it's an easy win. Neo, I think they should run, and keep running ball until they can stop them. Brian Fisher says 38-10 and Joe 67. Billy wasn't concerned at all about the kicker Smack. Yeah, I don't think there's anything to be concerned about Smack. I think that Smack is incredibly talented. There's a reason he's on the Lou Groza watch list. He's got the #1 long snapper in the nation last year in Rocco Underwood. I just do think that there's a little bit of adjustments that are happening with a new holder. So I think that is going to work itself out. There is nothing that can replicate live game reps. So thankfully, it was a tune-up game. Didn't matter. We didn't need the 9 points. And hopefully the adjustments are made and it's not an issue. But I am with Coach Napier. I don't think this is anything to be concerned about. I do want to know, is the defense able to get to the quarterback? Because as dominant as UF was on defense last week, they did not get to LIU's quarterback very much at all. And part of that was he only threw the ball 9 times, but I am interested to see what kind of pressure that defensive front can bring. And then I also want to know, what kind of DBs do we have out there? There was nothing that was going to challenge them last week. Will they be a little bit challenged this week? And if they are, how do they respond? Michael Swindell, Smack is world class, no problem. Brian Fisher, LSU looks slow on offense. Gabe, we will have over 250 yards rushing. I hope so. Okay, so what do I want to see? I want to see limited penalties. The fact that UF had none last year is a massive step in the right direction. That is not something that happens often, regardless of opponent. And one of my biggest gripes in the last 3 years has been game discipline of Napier teams. We have seen boneheaded penalties time and time again at just the most inopportune times, which is ironic for a program that is incredibly disciplined off the field. So that was something I was over the moon about. It is incredibly difficult to be penalty free. It's even more difficult when you are playing the sheer number of players that Florida was rotating in and out, and the number of guys who have never actually seen college reps before. It's incredibly impressive. So I want to see that number stays down. I want to see Florida's offensive line play better. I want to see if they let DJ Lagway open it up a little bit. I want to see if we really are going to see a 1-2 punch of Jaden Baugh and Jacoby Jackson, or if it is going to just be the ball show. All of these things are things I'm going to have my eye on. Okay, so now it is time to make the score prediction. I'm actually going to change my score on the fly from what I have written down. I've talked myself into this. I am going to say 37-10. That is where I think Florida lands. They cover, and I think Florida fans go home happy. But UF, entering a favorite, USF isn't just coming for a paycheck. They've got confidence, they've got momentum, and they've got a head coach who believes that his team's identity has finally clicked. But I think the Gators' talent, their depth, and their defense is going to be way too much for USF in the swamp. I expect Florida to take care of business, move to 2-0, and with DJ Lagway continuing his evolution into being the quarterback that we all know he is capable of being. Let me check your comments one more time before we get out of here. Boise State got to the USF quarterback, I think 3 sacks. I know, which I think will be an interesting comparison because we didn't get to LIU's quarterback. I'm interested to see, can we get to USF's? LIU wasn't dropping back like that. We'll get 6 sacks versus LSU. Listen, I'm here for that. Denton Carter, hopefully we are deep on the D-line. USF offense is high speed. That is an area we are incredibly deep. Gary Parrish, I want to see more defensive turnovers that we convert to scores. We did have that scoop and score last week and another fumble recovery, but I'm all for the defense scoring. Neo says 28-14 for him. Joe, 67, says 44-17. Brian Fisher, I was 1 point off of his prediction. Gabe, 45-13 with the Gators dominating. Chronicax says 30-17, Florida takes it. And Garrett Dendecker, I've been a UF fan since my son played baseball in 07. I knew your son in college, actually. He played 07 to 2010 for UF. Been waiting for Billy Napier to turn this program around. This will be a very exciting year. I absolutely agree, but I will tell you this. Nobody's college experience can stack up to what Matt got when he was at UF and what I got when I was at UF, because there was a whole lot of winning going on. I would love for a whole new generation of students to understand what it's like to have so many sports teams playing for national titles. That was definitely a very fun time to be a Gator. All right, that's your preview for Florida versus USF. What do you guys think? Will the Gators cover the spread, or can USF keep it interesting like they did in 2022? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to A Peek Inside Gator Football for more coverage all season long. If you guys see me in the stadium on Saturday, make sure you come say hi. And as always, go Gators!